So tonight's webinar gets us thinking about key concepts within the Islamic tradition, that speak about education. And again, two more pages out of the stimulus paper that are not necessarily meant to be read at this stage, but to give you a sense that there are concepts that we try to advance in the stimulus paper that are meant to just whet the appetite. So we give very brief um, definitions and conceptualizations of things like tarbiyah or ta'deeb or ta'aleem or tazkiyah and many other concepts that shape the work that we do in Islamic education. And tonight is an opportunity for us to take one of those concepts with the support of our guest speaker tonight, who I will turn to now. I'd like to introduce us to Dr. Samir Mahmood, who is a close friend, a dear friend, and mentor of mine, and for many of us, I think, across Australia and globally, because Dr. Samir is somebody that has taught and continues to teach both community programs and programs in Islamic studies as the academic director of Usul Academy. He's also continues to lecture in the diploma in Islamic psychology at Cambridge Muslim College in the UK. And I won't read his entire bio, but suffice it to say that Samir has touched the hearts and minds of many of us, and we look forward to an opportunity, Dr. Samir, to hear from you this evening and to benefit from the topic that's been provided as tarbiyah, as soul making. Over to you, Dr. Samir.
بارك الله فيكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد بن عبد الله أفضل الصلاة والتسليم. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Nadeem, for such a very generous introduction, and thank you for providing a springboard of ideas from which I can then launch into this presentation, inshallah. I hope you can all see my full screen slides. Tarbiyah as soul making. So I liked it when you mentioned the idea of a journey to distinction, because I do think we're at a critical juncture in the history and development of Islamic schooling, Islamic education. And we need to transition into this phase, aided by and armed with a new, renewed sense of niyyah, but also a renewed sense of concepts and ideas derived from our very rich tradition. I'd like to first actually start with an acknowledgement. I'm glad you made the acknowledgement of country, but I want to make an acknowledgement of several colleagues that I've had many dialogues with ever since I transitioned into the field of Islamic education about 5-6 years ago. So many ideas that stand out in this presentation are a result of this wonderful dialogue with these colleagues. Any errors and mistakes, of course, are mine and mine only, inshallah. So the structure of the presentation really is a twofold. I want to try to answer two questions in this presentation. I thought several ways of how I could do it, but I landed on this one at the end. I want to first very briefly define what I think education is. There are many definitions of education or tarbiyah. I'm not going to get too much into the etymology of the words necessarily, or the history and how it differs from some of the other terms that Dr. Nadeem just mentioned, like ta'aleem, ta'deeb, tazkiyah, tahqiq, etc. But I'm using here tarbiyah in its general understanding and meaning, which is equivalent to education. And then I want to, from there, move on to a very important question: what is the human being? Many of us assume we know what the human being is, but our education systems don't seem to be geared towards educating the entirety of the human being, at least as we understand the human being in the Islamic tradition. So, what do we mean by tarbiyah? And what do we mean when we say tarbiyah is a process of soul making? Interestingly enough, the term tarbiyah or education in both English and Arabic refer to two complementary processes. The first process is to cultivate the process of drawing in the outside world into us. So education is two moments, two steps, two processes, let's say, that are complementary. One is how we guide the process of drawing in the world. So we as human beings, we breathe in the world. We draw in influences, whether they're social, whether they're cultural, whether they're environmental, whether they're spiritual from the unseen world, whether they're from the realm of, let's say, shaitan, etc. We are creatures that are porous. We're not completely, uh, how should we say, impermeable. We're actually porous individuals who are open to influences from the outside world. And when we mean outside world, we're not just referring to the physical domain, alam al-mulk. We're also referring to the intermediate world, alam al-malakut, and also beyond that. So, so education then is partly guiding or cultivating this process of growing in the world into us. The second aspect of education or tarbiyah is to cultivate the process of drawing out. We not only breathe in, but also there's a process of breathing out. So, and breathing out really is here meant in the sense of education is also a process of cultivating how we bring out or actualize the latent possibilities within us and how we bring them out into the world and actualize. And later on, I'm going to use the image of a seed that unfolds to kind of really highlight this idea. So we can quickly then define education or tarbiyah as a dual process of drawing in the world, both the seen world or the unseen world, and all the influences and factors involved, and drawing out into the world that which is within us, particularly how we cultivate uh, certain kind of practices, ideas, dispositions, virtues, forms of knowledge that allow us to actualize that seed so it can mature and grow into fruition. Um, um, that being, of course, to actualize ahsan taqweem, the full possibilities of the human being as a insan mustakhlaf fil ard or a khalifa in the earth, in the land. But what an Islamic worldview teaches us, what the Islamic perspective teaches us, is that the interior world and the external world are much richer and much more multidimensional than what secular education usually refers to. So when we talk about the interiority and bringing that out, we're talking about not just our internal ideas and thoughts, but the entire interior world that links us all the way up to through alam al-malakut and alam al-lahu. Right? So there's a vast realms of interiority we are talking about. And there are also vast realms of exteriority. So education really is guiding, cultivating the process of that inward movement and outward movement, drawing in and drawing out, breathing in and breathing out. Education covers both these moments. I like this expression here. The acorn wants to become an oak tree because we all are coming to this world with a set of potentialities that seek to be actualized in this world. So in the world of creation, therefore, the whole process of drawing in, drawing out is most evident in the journey of the seed, which draws in the world to the nutrients, the sunlight, and the myriad of environmental factors, after which it draws out and unfolds its essence so it may bear its fruit after the process of growth is complete. So the fruit is already contained in the seed in potentia. So like the seed, and the Quran gives us many analogies to trees and plants and gardens, natural analogies, because there's a correspondence between these natural symbols or signs, ayat, and ourselves. So in the same way that the plant grows vertically upwards and downwards, and in the darkness of the soil, it draws in the nutrients, and also through the leaves and the branches, it draws in carbon and all sorts of different other elements from the air and water, etc. And in the darkness of that kind of soil, it gradually sprouts out above the surface and begins to differentiate into the distinct tree that it is under the influence of various environmental factors. Likewise, the human beings grows out of the darkness of the womb and emerges into this world, and gradually through a series of differentiations over the lifespan and various milestones, our ego, our identity begin to become differentiated from the primordial kind of, let's say, undifferentiated state in our early childhood, and becomes gradually, until by the age of 18, 19, 20, 21, we become very distinct individuals with a distinct sense of I or identity. So the dual moments of drawing in from the outside and drawing out from the inside constitute the process that defines the growth, maturation, and actualization of all natural things, including human beings. Okay, so this is the process of education. Now, Now we understand what this process of education actually is. Um, I want us now to reflect on what is the human being. And then while I'm talking about what is the human being, I want you to reflect, if this is the human being, then what implications does that have in terms of drawing in and drawing out? So there are a number of ways in which in the Islamic tradition we can talk about the human being. Uh, and it's important to emphasize this point at this moment. When I say there are many ways, I mean there are literally many, many, many different ways of looking at the human being. We're very rich, very complex creatures that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. Um, but I want to share here a number of perspectives. And it's not exhaustive, there are many others, but I want to show you how, if we draw on the richness, the vast richness and diversity of the Islamic tradition, how we can extract today many perspectives that are of immediate educational relevance for schooling today. So what do we mean by when we say the human being? What is the being of this human being? I'm going to give you a number of definitions. There are many others, but the first is one potential way of looking at the human being is to say the human being consists of a spirit, a ruh, that is breathed, nafakha. The Quran says nafakha, wa nafakhna fihi, into a body, a jism, by God, and endowed with a fund of natural and innate possibilities, which is the fitrah, that seek fulfillment and actualization tahqiq over the seasons of an individual's lifespan. A very comprehensive definition, I think, about what the human being actually is. We're essentially a ruh, but that ruh then is breathed into and manifests in the physical world through being present in a body. So the ruh governs the body, and this is all granted to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ruh comes into this world, and when it's breathed into the body, it brings with it a set of, or a fund of natural and innate potentialities, possibilities, dispositions, the fitrah. So we don't come into this world as a tabula rasa. We don't come into this world empty. We come to this world with innate possibilities that seek to be actualized. But these various possibilities of our innate nature or fitrah seek actualization at various moments and different moments or different developmental stages of our lifespan. In classical Islamic tradition, we call the life of the individual mawasim al-umr, seasons of life, or the seasons of an individual's life cycle through this world. A very beautiful image because it suggests that from the very beginning, the ruh is working its way through our existence. It guides the development of the fetus in the womb, the ruh being our essence, and it carries with it a variety of different possibilities, including, according to many scholars, including the initial vision and witnessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or witnessing of the encounter with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which the Quran refers to as the day of Alast, or Alastu bi Rabbikum, when we stood before our Lord and he said, Alastu bi Rabbikum, and we said, Bala. So we come into this world with a memory, a distinct memory, or traces of an encounter with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a witnessing, a shuhudi moment. But also we come into this world as a manifestation of a variety of different divine names, right? So we come into this world already ennobled and already with so much that we are enriched with. You can also say that the human being, as I just said, manifests all the divine names, al-asma, and is the pinnacle of creation, a Khalifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. We're a Khalifa because we possess a ruh. We're a Khalifa because we manifest all the totality of the divine names in a way that no other creature in existence does. The human being is also, this is another image we can dwell on and draw out its implications in education, which are huge. The human being is a creature that is a microcosm. أتحسب أنك جرم صغير وقد انطوى فيك العالم الأكبر. This is saying from Imam Ali radiallahu anhu, we are a microcosm of the macrocosm. نحن جرم صغير of what? Of the macrocosm, العالم الأكبر. And so we contain within us the totality of the created world, the created order. Now, it's very difficult for us to understand, mired as we are in a very kind of materialist worldview, positivist, reductionist, etc. But unless we recover the richness of this multi-layered, multi-level view of existence in which the human being participates, it's going to be very difficult for us to really develop our own indigenous educational philosophy and framework that informs, therefore, what we teach and how we teach it and when we teach it in our schools. Another way, and I'm going to break this down a little bit more, we can look at the human being as obviously consisting of three components. they're not really three distinct components. The human being is a unified single reality, but we can say that the human being has a ruh, which is the essence. We have a body, which is a physical world. But when the ruh manifests in a body and intermingles with it, that aspect of the ruh that mingles with the body, we call the soul, the nafs, right? Uh, and of course, what this does is this tripartite view of the human being means that we coexist simultaneously in multiple levels of reality. We don't just exist in the physical world, right? The physical world grants us through the five senses access to the physical world around us, but we're not only inhabiting a physical world. So, what does education mean when we say that uh, we don't inhabit only a physical world? It means that there are other faculties within us in the realm of the soul, in the realm of the spirit, that require our careful attention in any educational process. Um, and these difficult faculties, or the different modes of perception, or the different capacities for perceiving and knowing, uh, are functions of different aspects of our being. Right? Our qalb is essentially a spiritual reality. Though our physical qalb, our physical heart, is part of our body. When we refer to the qalb, of course, in the Islamic tradition, we're really referring to the innermost reality that is spiritual and is part of our spiritual capacities. When we talk about feelings, for example, a feeling, though it manifests in a body, feelings exist within the realm of our soul life, right? We have imagination also. In imagination, there are two different types of imagination. There's imagination that belongs to the lower nafs. There's imagination that belongs to the higher nafs, which is where we touch upon the realm of the ruh. There we have memories, we have intellect, we have spiritual intuition, etc., etc. So we have various modalities. The question to education experts is, what aspects of these faculties, how many of these faculties are we actually educating in our schools? How many are we actually taking into account? Uh, this is a very important question because we can't really, therefore, complain when our youth in their late teens and early university, their qalb, their heart doesn't work, they can't perceive beyond the physical world. Did we ever educate them to cultivate the heart as a mode of perception? Did we ever cultivate the practice of tazkiyah? Did we ever assist them and teach them in the polishing of the heart in order for it to be able to then pierce beyond the physical and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? To what extent do we train the imagination? To what extent do we develop all these other faculties, the higher intellect, for example? So again, I have another image here, which is also derived from the classical Islamic tradition. And it's another way of looking at the human being, right? Earlier I said, you can see here on the right-hand side, that the human being consists of a body, soul, and a spirit. But we can also say that the human being also consists of different levels within the soul. There's, according to some classical scholars, we have a mineral soul, nafs ma'daniyya, and this nafs ma'daniyya relates to the mineral physicality of our body. Our body consists of minerals, right? And we share that with the rest of the physical world. But we also consist of a vegetative soul. Basically, vegetative soul in classical thought refers to those life forces within us that govern the process of nutrition, growth, and healing. So from the fetus, and when the child is born, and as the child goes up to the age of 21 and 22, etc., there are these life forces that are, growing, they're guiding the process of nutrition, growth, and healing of the body, the metabolism, etc. All these are very fascinating processes, and it's important to understand what is happening within the child as the child is growing up, when it is happening, because understanding what is happening and when it's happening helps us to understand what to teach and when to teach it. The human being also possesses also nafs hayawaniya. That's usually associated with basic instincts and forces like hunger, thirst, sexual drive, fear, etc. And that's associated also with our nervous system, rudimentary inner feelings. That mainly drives instinct and impulses. So when the scholars tell us you have to discipline the nafs al-hayawaniyah, what they mean is not eliminate it, but bring it under the sway of the human soul. And that's al-insaniyah and nafs al-aqila. Because all these aspects of our being, the mineral soul, the vegetative soul, the animal soul, they constitute fundamental processes, or they reflect fundamental processes that are happening within us. And each one of these has different developmental milestones throughout the life of a child. So, for example, in the animal soul, the sexual desire and drive doesn't really emerge in a child until the early teens, for example, right? It's important to know that. It's also important to know when, for example, um, certain types of feelings emerge within the child. It's also important to understand, for example, when we talk about the human soul here, nafs al-insaniya, at what stage of a child's development can we train the will, the irada? Because the will, the sense of unique identity, the sense of being a rational being and self-aware, these are functions of the ruh. These are functions of the ruh because that's what defines us as human beings as opposed to the rest of the kingdoms of nature. When do we train the aql? You can't speak in a rational sense to a child who's not yet developed cognitive capacities, for example. At what age do we train the will? When does it really emerge? When are we able to actually directly address the will of the child? These are all very important questions that we have to take into account, and a classical tradition provides some guidance and indications on this. Um, and like I said, there are many, many other possible ways of looking at the human being that can enrich our educational understanding of the child and the processes unfolding within the child. Why is it that, for example, a child at a certain age, he tends to draw a lot and paint a lot? Why is it that they cultivate a sense of imagination more than at another age? Why is it that at a certain age, for example, a child demands explanations through logic and reason? And they don't demand it at another age, for example. So knowing all these are very important, and laying out the different functions of the soul or different aspects of the soul in this particular way that I'm pointing out allows us to see that what is developing at the level of the body, what is developing at the level of sensory motor skills, what is developing at the level of emotions, when is it developing, what is developing at the level of moral capacities, cognitive functions, etc., etc. The last slide I want to share with you here is what are the indication implications of some of these? We talk about the mineral soul, the vegetative soul, the animal soul, the human soul. We're talking about each one of these has to be educated and addressed in a different way, right? For example, when we talk about vegetative soul, and to a certain extent the animal soul, balance and rhythm are very, very important to be cultivated in the child, whether it's linking it to the rhythms of nature, or whether it's rhythms of actions, rhythms of the day, rhythms of the hour. Salat, of course, is beautiful when it comes to regulating the rhythm of a child. They're very, very important. The rhythm and regulation of breathing. Breathing changes and alters in the child from different age. Nutritional balance, very important. Physical balance, health, etc. When and how do we cultivate sense of ethics and akhlaq? At different ages, we teach akhlaq differently. We can't teach ethical theory to a child, a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, but we teach akhlaq in a different way, indirectly. Right? We educate the will also in a different way. We educate the heart in a different way, aql, etc. I don't have time, unfortunately, to get into details. I just wanted to share these ideas. So we go back to our understanding of education as a drawing in and drawing out. Education then becomes a very sophisticated, precise science of understanding the human being in their fullness, so understanding full aspects of the human being, the body, the soul, the spirit, and within the body, all the processes that are happening, within the soul, all the processes that are happening and faculties of perception, etc., etc. Understanding all these helps understand how we can regulate the process and guide the process of drawing in, and then therefore drawing out or actualizing the full possibilities that we contain within us at the moment of inception, at the moment of the fitrah, at the moment that the ruh has breathed into our bodies, inshallah. There's a lot more that I can say. I only have 20 minutes, inshallah, but maybe at a future date we can elaborate in more detail, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that, Dr. Samir. MashaAllah, you've given us lots of food for thought, and I'm sure we'll have a little bit of time in the discussion to dig into this. And for those of you that would like even more, Dr. Samir will be presenting at our annual conference in Brisbane in August, and I think it'll be an extension, inshallah, to a lot of the thoughts that he's shared here. But I think some of the key things that you've allowed us to expand our understanding of just tarbiyah as nurturing or as soul making, but actually thinking about each of the different faculties And as you said, which of these faculties are we nurturing in our schools? Um, and also thinking about the processes of what's developing in the human being and when, I think are really important questions for us to deliberate on. Inshallah, we have a little bit more time to do that shortly.